Rain is falling on a mountain in central Japan. It has been falling since dusk. You are lying flat in it, 30 paces from a wooden wall. Above you stands a castle. Not the white tower on a stone base you are picturing right now. That castle has not been invented yet. This one is packed earth, timber, thatch, and plank, thrown up along a ridge because the ridge was already there. Inside it, several hundred men. Outside it, an army that cannot get in. You have watched this wall for 2 nights. You know which plank sits loose. You know the guard on the north side turns his back to the wind because the wind comes up the valley and the rain rides in on it. You are not carrying a straight black sword. You are not wearing a mask. Nothing about you would make a farmer look twice. And what you do in the next 10 minutes will be copied by professional soldiers for the next 250 years, and then misunderstood by the entire world for the next 600.
Because tonight, you become the first shinobi in Japan's written record. You do it with fire. The hardest part of this night is not the wall. The hardest part is the thing you are keeping alive in your hand, in the rain. Hold that thought. We will come back to it. First, the record itself, because the record is thin, and the thinness is the point. The book is called the Taiheiki. The name means Chronicle of Great Peace, which is a joke history played on itself, because the book is 400 pages of civil war. It was compiled in the 14th century, during and after the wars between Japan's northern and southern imperial courts, a struggle that ran from 1336 to 1392 and tore the country into rival emperors, rival capitals, and rival armies. Somewhere in that chronicle, a man goes over a wall on a black, wind-torn night, and the text calls him a shinobi, a man skilled in shinobi. He gets inside, he sets a fire, and the castle that could not be taken begins taking itself apart.
That is nearly all of it. He has no name. The chronicle does not describe his clothes, his tools, his training, or his fee. Historians still argue over exactly which siege the passage belongs to and which year to pin it in. What survives is a job title and a result. And notice what that job title is not. It is not ninja. That reading of the characters spread in the 20th century, in pulp novels and then in films. The word in the old texts is shinobi, or shinobi no mono, and it means, plainly, one who endures, one who hides. A verb, not a costume. Notice something else. He is not from Iga. He is not from Koga. The famous mountain leagues that sold espionage on contract, the ones every documentary opens with, are not organized players yet. They come later. So the first professional in the record has no province, no name, no mask, and no sword worth mentioning. He has a fire. Why fire? Look back at the wall you were lying under.
A Japanese fortress of this century is a machine made of things that burn. Timber frames, plank walls, thatch and shingle roofs, rice straw, bundled arrows, barrels of oil for lamps, stored grain, which is dust, which is worse. Stone is used for foundations and slopes, not for the building. The one enemy that can undo 100 men on a ridge is not 100 men on the ground. It is a spark in the right room. An army that surrounds this place must feed itself for weeks, sicken in its own camp, and climb into arrows at the end of it. One man with a flame skips the entire argument. That is the trade in its purest form, and it is the reason the trade exists at all. Not assassination, not duels on rooftops, arson, and the panic that follows arson. Because the fire is not really the weapon. The fire is the trigger. Watch what happens when it catches. Men who were holding a wall turn around to face the smoke. The line thins.
Somebody shouts that the enemy is inside, and now everybody believes it, because a fire could not start on its own in this rain. Orders collide. Water gets carried the wrong way. A gate opens from the inside, because the fastest route to the burning tower runs through it, and a gate open for one heartbeat is a gate open. And out on the dark slope, an army that has waited 2 weeks sees a light come up over the ridgeline and starts running. One man made several hundred men fight themselves. Here is the question that decides how you understand the next 400 years of Japanese warfare. If you had a castle to take and one knight to take it, what would you send? 100 swordsmen up a mountain, into arrows, in the rain? Or one man who knows which plank is loose? The chronicles answered it a long time ago. Commanders kept paying for the second option, quietly, for centuries. And the same chronicle shows you the logic in daylight.
The Taiheiki tells how the warrior Kusunoki Masashige, fighting for the southern emperor Go-Daigo, held the mountain fort of Chihaya in 1333 against a vastly larger force, and it credits him with tricks rather than strength. Dummies dressed as soldiers to draw wasted volleys, logs and stones down the slope, night sorties, supply lines cut instead of enemies killed. The chronicle also tells how Akasaka Castle was retaken the year before, in 1332, by men who simply walked in. They came up the road dressed as a supply column, carrying provisions the garrison was expecting, and once they were inside the gate, the delivery became the attack. Now, hold those stories at arm's length for a moment, because this is where this channel earns its keep. The Taiheiki is a war tale as much as a war record. It was written to be recited aloud. It rounds numbers up, it gives dying men beautiful speeches, and where it says 10,000, you should probably hear many. What it is genuinely good evidence for is not the exact body count on a given hillside.
It is what 14th-century Japanese people considered normal, effective warfare, and worth writing down. And what they considered worth writing down was this: the clever entry, the disguise, the fire. So when the professionals appear a century and a half later, they are not inventing a craft, they are formalizing one. By the 1500s, the mountain districts of Iga and Koga are running that craft as a business. Farmer warriors in poor, broken country, governing themselves through leagues rather than lords, hiring out to daimyo who need eyes, rumors, night entry, and smoke. Other warlords keep their versions under other names. The Takeda called theirs Supa, the Hojo called theirs Rappa. And when their manuals finally get written down in the peaceful Edo period, look what fills the pages. The Bansenshukai, compiled in 1676 from Iga and Koga knowledge, is not a book of flips and blade tricks. It is a professional compendium, and a substantial part of it is devoted to fire and to the gear that carries it, alongside chapters on weather, tides, star navigation, and the psychology of reading a man's face at a gate. Which brings us back to your hand. You are lying in the rain, and the thing you are keeping alive is an ember. That is the actual technical problem of the first night raid in Japanese history, and of every one after it. Not the climb, not the guard. Fire that must travel silently through wet country, survive a river crossing and a wall, and then be enormous in about 4 seconds. The later manuals answer that problem in obsessive detail because it was the job. Hollow tubes packed with slow-burning tinder that hold a coal for hours, ropes soaked and treated so they smolder without a visible flame, water-resistant torches, recipes for fire arrows, powder and saltpeter, written out as carefully as any pharmacist's formula. That last detail explains something strange in the historical record.
When the wars finally ended and the trade collapsed, an unusual number of men from these same mountain districts turn up in 2 peaceful professions: traveling medicine sellers and firework makers. Of course they do. They already knew the chemistry and the roads and how to talk their way past a checkpoint. Now think about what got taken from that man on the wall and what got thrown away. Nobunaga, the warlord who unified much of Japan, sent overwhelming force into Iga province in 1581 and burned it. The homeland of the professional shinobi was destroyed by exactly the weapon its people had perfected. Fire does not care who owns the manual. And the image that outlived them all was built later, on a stage. Kabuki dressed its stagehands in black so audiences would read them as invisible, then let one of those invisible men draw a blade. Pulp novels gave him magic.
film gave him a straight sword he never carried. The world got a costume.
Meanwhile, the true signature of the trade sits in plain sight, and nobody notices it. Watch any ninja in any film, in any anime, in any game you have ever played. Sooner or later, the screen fills with smoke, or the hero makes a hand sign and breathes out fire. Everyone treats that as the fantasy part. The swords and the black mask are the invention. The fire is the documentary footage. So go back to the mountain one last time. Rain, still falling. A wall of timber and thatch. A man flat in the mud, with no name, no province, no mask, and nothing in his hands that a farmer could not own. He is not there to kill anyone. He is there to make several hundred men turn around. In a few minutes he will be over the wall, and the wet dark will come apart in orange, and an army will start running up a slope it could not climb for 2 weeks. You were told the first ninja was a shadow with a sword. The first ninja on record was a man carrying a spark through the rain.